Hi everyone, my name is David Theriault and I'm a high school English teacher in the Huntington Beach Unified High School District. I've been teaching for 26 years. The last 5 years I've taught an online hybrid class where I meet with my students one day a week and then I meet distance with my students the rest of the week. And I'm here to talk to you today about my CIA AV strategies that I use for starting off my lesson units. So if you're looking for ways of starting off either your week or each one of your units or even the school year, um, these are 5 different ways that are shown to increase students' engagement with whatever learning material you're going to do. These work for me in English, but they should work in almost any other subject. And I'm just going to make a short video for each one of the strategies. There's 5 strategies total. And then you can just kind of go from one to the other, or skip around, whatever else you want to do. So we're going to start with the first of the CIA AV strategies, and let's go ahead and get started right now. So I think that the thing that we're all worried about a little bit is how we're going to capture students' attention, especially when there's so many things distracting them at home. It's, usually in our classrooms we have the cell phone uh, little grid thing that everybody puts their cell phone in, the pocket charts, right? And then, or you can just see whether the students are looking at you or not. You can ask them to put their cell phones away. But at home, they're going to have their cell phones, they're going to have their computers, they're going to have their gaming devices. They've got all sorts of things asking for their attention. And we probably feel a little overwhelmed with how are students going to pay attention to me and how am I going to get them to pay attention? Well, I want to reassure you just a little bit about this whole worry that we all have about students paying attention with online distance learning. And to do so, I'm going to talk to you about Mike Trout and the Angels. So for those of you who don't know, you don't follow baseball or anything like that, Mike Trout is arguably the best baseball player, not just this year, but maybe of his generation. And people, including me, spend money to go to Angel baseball games to watch him play. Now, I can assure you that if you're spending your own hard-earned cash and you're driving to the game and you're sitting in the seat, you're of course going to pay attention when Mike Trout and the other Angels are playing. But unfortunately, that's just not the case, because if you look around the baseball stadium, you will see that there's all sorts of people who aren't paying attention at all. They're on their cell phones, they're talking, they're going to get a drink or something to eat, just like our students leave our classroom because they want to go to the vending machine. They're going to the bathroom. They're talking to each other, just goofing around, whatever. And so, even though people are paying money, they're still not paying attention. And I think that's important for us to think about, that a student's attention is not ours to control, even if you think you can get, Go Guardian and you'll be able to tell exactly what they're doing. Just because the student's on a site doesn't mean they're engaged, doesn't mean they're listening. All you can do is just do the best job that you can and try and present to them some interesting stuff, and hopefully that will capture your attention. Um, and maybe you're thinking like, oh, well, David, those are just Angel fans, right? They're not real baseball fans. You need to go to the San Francisco Giants. Nope. If you look, here's a picture of a San Francisco Giant baseball game, and you can tell that there's plenty of people who aren't paying attention. And then you might say to yourself, well, David, that's just nowadays. Back in the day when people didn't have cell phones, they were definitely paying attention because that was the golden age of paying attention. Here is a black and white photo, and if you were to zoom in on the photo, you would see that there's lots of people not watching the game and not paying attention because people can only pay attention for so long. And that's the second thing I want to talk to you about. Make sure that you're not making your videos too long, or you're not asking students to pay attention for too long. Just like you would have transitions in the classroom, you should have transitions in your online and distance learning. So keep everything really short and to the point. Okay, so let's go to our first strategy. How can you capture students' attention? And the first strategy is highlighted with this. Okay, for those of you who have been to a sporting event and they have some little guessing game, right? Guessing is a way of capturing students' attention. It's a way of making students involuntarily curious. Okay. And there are many different ways of making students have involuntary curiosity. And why is involuntary curiosity so important? Because you don't have to pay somebody to be curious, and you don't have to give them a grade to be curious. There are scientifically proven ways of making students have involuntary curiosity. And let's just go over a couple of those real quick. Okay, I got this from a teacher in Northern California, Ramsey Muslim. He's a science teacher. He's brilliant. He's awesome. It was a Cycles of Learning website. There's a link up there. You can check it out. Okay. So here's 5 different ones. The posing of a question, puzzle, or riddle. And we know this. We do this as teachers all the time. We ask a question of our students. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody is going to answer the question or raise their hand, but I guarantee if you ask a question, everybody is going to think about that question, even for just a moment. The exposure to a sequence of events with an anticipated but unknown conclusion, like murder mysteries. People love murder mysteries. Sporting events, political elections, trials, right? Criminal trials. We all want to know what's going to happen. The violation of an expectation. So a young high school girl, her plane explodes in the middle of a storm 2 miles up, and she survives. How? Right? We want to know how. The possession of information by somebody else, gossip, secrets. Did you hear? Like if you walk in the lounge and you say, hey, did you guys hear? Everybody is paying attention. And then also, when something is on the tip of your tongue, like something you used to know or used to be able to do, and you want to see if like you can do that, like, can I remember it? Can I do that? That will also spark involuntary curiosity. So can I remember the capital of New York, which by the way, it's Albany. Okay, so we'll talk about, here's one specific example, and it's the violation of expectation. I had my students listen to this podcast. It's from the podcast Futility Closet, episode 161. And it is a real life story in 1971. A young girl was on a plane with her mom. Unfortunately, her mom didn't make it. In fact, nobody on the plane made it except for Julianne. And the plane just exploded into pieces in the middle of a storm. She fell 2 miles down into the Peruvian rainforest, and she survived. But then that was just the beginning of her ordeal, because how does she get out of the middle of a rainforest? It's a really gripping and interesting podcast. It's about 15 minutes long. My students will listen to it, and then for the week, I will tie into the learning to that. So, for example, we did a unit about kind of just surviving our situation, and because this was like during the quarantine, and so I had my students do a bunch of readings about best practices in surviving your situation, and they ended up doing a piece of writing. But this is how I started off the unit, was having them listen to this podcast, and my students loved this podcast, and they definitely paid attention. Okay, so that is the first one in the CIA-AV. It's curiosity, and with the next video, we're going to talk about the I, which is ignorance, and I can't wait to talk to you. All right, thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.